everybody, and welcome back to SFF180. TMW here. It is March the 10th, and it is time for Mailbag Monday. It is, as I'm shooting this, a very wet and gray and rainy Saturday late afternoon. This morning it was coming down in absolute buckets, so it is a perfect day to sit around inside and read. But the mailbag, oh wow, what a big week this was, guys. It's too large a stack, once again, to actually have in my lap and hold up like I usually do. The stack is on the floor in front of me, and it is pretty much up to my knees. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into this, except to say, again, thank you all for the nice growth in the channel this week. The Words of Radiance review has been getting really nice views, racking those up pretty quickly, and new subs are coming in, so welcome new people, and thank you very much for joining the channel. And I want to say a special, I don't do this always, but as much as I should, but a very special thank you to the wonderful, talented Matt Olson, who does all of the Wink cartoons for my beautiful title cards. Thanks very much. His DeviantArt page is linked in the About section. Please go check that out because it will enrich your life. So, on to the books. First one's from Penguin. Okay, well, I appear to have been sent the brand new paperback edition of Lexicon by Max Barry. This is a book that has gotten quite a bit of good press. In fact, I think it is on the BSFA shortlist, but I'd have to check. Anyway, for those of you unfamiliar, let's see what it's about. Okay, so this paperback hits stores March 25th. At an exclusive school somewhere outside Arlington, Virginia, students aren't taught history, geography, or mathematics, at least not in the usual ways. Instead, they are taught to persuade. Here, the art of coercion has been raised to a science. Students learn that every person can be classified by an extremely specific, turn the page, personality type, his mind segmented and ultimately controlled by the skillful and sometimes magical application of words. The very best will become part of a secretive organization of, quote, poets, elite manipulators of language who can wield words as weapons and bend others to their will. So that sounds like it could be an interestingly paranoid little concept. Lexicon by Max Barry. Very well received in hardcover, and now the paperback is out March 25th. Okay, and this one is from Penguin as well. Okay, this is Dawn's Early Light. The authors are Pip Ballantyne, who also writes as Philippa Ballantyne, and T. Morris. This is the third book in the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences series, and it's kind of an X-Files-y steampunk investigation series. I read about 100 pages of the first book about a year or so ago when before work killed me. I thought it was cute, you know, it had some entertainment value, but I wish I had finished it. The series has jumped ship to Ace Books after first being published by Harper Voyager, so at least it's continuing. So if you are a fan of this series, you'll be happy to know that the third volume is out, Dawn's Early Light. Okay, these are 3 more paperbacks from Penguin on the Daw and Rock imprints now. I guess I'm just getting the March mass market paperback titles from them, so just go through them really quickly. This is Stone Cold, sequel to Hell Bent, a new series by a very popular writer, Devin Monk. Marked is the third book in the Mind Space Investigations series. This is, again, I started the first one. This is kind of a paranormal investigation cop story series, but not in the usual paranormal investigation sense. It's set in a kind of dystopian future when there has been like a serious technological crisis. Something has occurred that has made technology no longer mostly usable. It's, you know, like people, you know, it takes days for an email to get to people, you know, that sort of thing. So this is the third book in that series, Marked. And finally, we have The Forever Night by another well-known fantasist, John Marco. I think this is the paperback edition of a book that appeared in hardcover maybe about a year or so ago. So here you go. These are 3 more Penguin paperback titles for March. Okay, here's a Random House title. Again, if you're new to Mailbag Monday, if you're new to the channel, if you're a new subscriber, the whole idea here is that I show you my weekly mail. These are all the review copies that I get in the mail from publishers for the full week. You basically check them out and tell me in the comments which of these you would like to see me prioritize for a review. Now, I don't often get young adult stuff in the mail, but that looks to be picking up. This is a book called Acid. The author is Emma Pass, and let's see what this is all about. Because, to be fair, it does kind of have that urban fantasy look, but maybe it's not. Let's see. It's not. The year is 2113. In Jenna Strong's world, I guess that's the character, Acid, the most brutal controlling police force in history, rules supreme. The agency monitors everyone's movements, controls food consumption, and where people work and live, and even forces them into early marriages with predetermined partners. Jesus. No throwaway comment or whispered dissent goes unnoticed or unpunished. Okay, young adult dystopia. And it was Acid agents who locked Jenna away for life for a horrendous crime she struggles to remember. But Jenna's violent prison time has taught her how to survive by any means necessary. When a mysterious rebel group breaks her out, Jenna must use her strength, speed, and skill to stay one step ahead of Acid and try to uncover the truth about what really happened on that terrible night 2 years ago. They have taken her life, her freedom, and her true memories away from her. How can she reclaim anything when she doesn't know who to trust? A little bit of paranoia. Frankly, the whole idea of a terrifying police state is very much in people's minds these days. So Acid by Emma Pass. Let me know. All right, everybody. This is a big Macmillan package. It's a nice padded envelope with something in it that feels like a tiny little brick. I bet I know what this is. And I was right. How about that? It is the Macmillan audio version of Words of Radiance. As you know, I reviewed that book last Monday, and this is the audiobook version, 48 and a half hours on 38 CDs, people. But what a package it is. I don't think it quite took me as long to read the book cumulatively, but anyway, I was sent the audiobook for The Way of Kings back when that was released as well. And as with most Macmillan audio productions, it was a very good recording, very good reading, very skilled reader. Didn't try to turn it into a big drama or anything. It was just very straightforward, well-produced reading of the book. And so if you're a fan of audiobooks, and thunder. What did I tell you about the storm? Did you hear that? That was serious thunder. Anyway, and goes with these clouds. Words of Radiance in audio, folks. It is now available. I just had a look at the back of that package for that CD set. That'll set you back $85. So, audiobook listeners, you are a dedicated bunch, I tell you. Anyway, here is something else from Random House. Oh, wait, I was wrong. This is from the folks at Prometheus, who I guess are shipping some of their stuff now through Random House. But this is the finished copy of Mark Smiley's The Barrow. You may or may not remember several weeks ago I got the ARC for this and showcased it on Mailbag Monday then. So now they've sent me the finished copy. Thank you very much, guys. I am looking very seriously at bumping this up in the queue because some friends of mine have read it, particularly Sarah over at Bookworm Blues really liked it. Quite a bit, in fact. So I did a little bit of reading up on this, and apparently the origin of this story was in the graphic novels that came out, I think, in the late 90s. And now the creator has moved into novel format. I don't think that will technically qualify it as a tie-in. I think that he's just expanding his universe into traditional novel writing. But I've heard very good things about this from people whose opinions I trust. So, The Barrow by Mark Smiley. Very handsome edition, that, too. Okay, this also says from Prometheus Books. And another finished copy of a book for which I have already showcased the ARC here on the Mailbag. This is the new book by John Sprunk, Blood and Iron. Several other reviewers have been talking about this as something that they are certainly keeping an eye on as being worth looking at. So let me again just refresh your memories as to what it's all about. This action-heavy epic fantasy series opener is like a sword and sorcery Spartacus set in a richly imagined world. Now, of course, Spartacus, the original Spartacus, has the swords, but none of the sorceries. So anyway, it's part one of the Book of the Black Earth. It starts with a shipwreck following a magical storm at sea. Horus, a soldier from the west, had joined the Great Crusade against the heathens of Achaia after the deaths of his wife and son from plague. When he washes ashore, he finds himself at the mercy of the very people he was sent to kill, who speak a language and have a culture and customs he doesn't even begin to understand. And then he's pressed into service as a house slave, and they learn that he was a sorcerer, and so it's interesting then. I guess you're going to have a man being integrated into the culture, a culture which he has all his life been trained to think of as an enemy. So this could be very interesting. Blood and Iron, and it looks very brooding, but could be very good adult epic fantasy. Let me know. I don't know if you're hearing that deep rolling thunder, but it's awesome. It's awesome. We don't usually get these kinds of storms. Well, let's see what we have here. Simon & Schuster. Again, it all seems like I'm repeating myself, but I'm not really. This was an arc, again, a few episodes back, but if you missed it, The Wicked by Douglas Nicholas. This is the second book in a series by this gentleman. Something Red was the first book. I was sent that as well, so I now have that and the new one. The whole idea is, in this mesmerizing and highly anticipated sequel to the critically acclaimed historical fantasy, Something Red sees its cast of winning characters confronting an ancient evil that threatens an ally's court. This is basically set many, many centuries ago in England. And it involves, the first book, Something Red, involves a group of warriors who are sort of out on this mission to find some creature that is menacing the landscape. The Wicked transports readers to the harsh and enchanting world of 13th century England. There it is. So, again, much, much older than a lot of medieval-influenced historical fantasies tend to do. A group of unlikely heroes battles an ancient evil, an unforgettable blend of fantasy, mythology, and horror. The Wicked is just as chilling, beautifully written, and historically rich as Something Red, drawing readers into a world both magical and haunting where nothing is ever as it seems. So let me know about these two. I think they look really fascinating. Douglas Nicholas is the author. Something Red and its sequel, The Wicked, which is now out. Random House. Random House. Let's see what's random about this house. Huh, this looks interesting and kind of eerie. The Detainee, the first book in a trilogy called The Detainee. The author is Peter Linney, or Liney, but probably Linney. And let's see, in his debut novel, The Detainee, which is out on the 11th, so tomorrow, Linney has created a disturbingly plausible dystopian world in which the state has gone bust and can no longer support its weakest members. The island means the end of all hope for those whom society has deemed expendable. This isn't a punishment island only for criminals. The elderly, sick, and the poor have also been deemed no longer fit for society and are the scapegoats for the collapse of life as we know it. There's no point in trying to escape, for the satellites, the invisible eyes of the law, mete out instant judgment from the sky. And that's just the beginning, for there are things worse than the satellites on the island. When the fog comes down and the drums signaling the hunt start to beat, the inhabitants of the island tremble. For the punishment satellites, which also keep the tyrannical waste lords at bay, are blind in the darkness, and the islanders become prey to the demons hiding in the shadows. Well, that's a happy story, isn't it? Anyway, well, The Detainee. I guess, if you like it dark and grim and ugly and violent and a nice hopeless future, this could be the book for you. All right, big old vacuum-sealed massive package from Hachette. That would be the Orbit people. Let's see what they sent me. Okay, I thought it might be this. This is the sequel to a book called Wolfhound Century by Peter Higgins. It's called Truth and Fear. If you aren't familiar with what this series is all about, it's essentially an alternate Russia. With conspiracies afoot and what have you, Investigator Lom returns to Mirgorod and finds the city in the throes of a crisis. The war against the archipelago is not going well, etc. So I don't want to spoil anything for those who haven't read the first book. I've got Wolfhound Century, but this is the second book, Truth and Fear, and some of the blurbs on the back cover say things like, an amazing, fast-paced story in a fantasy world poised dangerously on the edge of quantum probability, a world where angels war with reality. Peter F. Hamilton, no less a person than, offered that quote. See, Hanu Rajanami says, I absolutely loved Wolfhound Century. Higgins' world is a truly original creation, Russian cosmism, and Slavic mythology filtered through steampunk and Jean Le Carré. All right, that'll tell you right there if it's the sort of thing that you're into. I could definitely bump these up in the queue. Wolfhound Century and its sequel, Truth and Fear, now available from Orbit. Thank you, Orbit. And now we have the Tor titles on the bottom of the stack. And how about that? I now have a second copy of The Raven Shadow by Elspeth Cooper. Showcased this. I got another copy last week, so you may remember it is the third book in the Wild Hunt series. Okay, here's another one from Tor. I've actually been looking forward to a great deal. It's the sequel to a book called A Natural History of Dragons. The author is Marie Brennan. This is The Tropic of Serpents, a memoir by Lady Trent. And here's the basic idea. Imagine the scene. Charles Darwin, wind at his back, as he sailed towards adventure and discovery only the truly brave can attain, to return one day with knowledge to shape the world. Now, replace Charles with the indomitable Lady Isabella Trent and add dragons. So the second installment of Lady Trent's memoir. So she is a female naturalist which is what they called them in those days, in the early 19th century, featuring a headstrong female whose intellect and will won't be stifled by her times, and a refreshingly scientific take on the well-worn fantasy trope of dragons. This series provides a delightfully admirable heroine and promises to please both genre fans and skeptics. Particularly enriching the narrative are the beautiful illustrations by Todd Lockwood, littered throughout. So this is, again, a fantasy premise given a historical science-fictional bent. Love the idea. Very much looking forward to reading these. The Tropic of Serpents by Marie Brennan. And the final package. And the rain continues to gush outside. It's awesome. It's really awesome. I love storms. Love storms. Okay, everyone, here is an epic fantasy by Glenn Cook. It is the fourth in his series, The Instrumentalities of Night, and it's called Working God's Mischief. And I must admit, Glenn Cook is an author whom I have not given his proper due, I don't think. As for this series, I have the other volumes, in fact, sitting right there on the shelf. So perhaps I should really start paying attention to these. But he's the author of the influential and acclaimed Black Company series, of course, and now he makes a welcome return to the fantasy world with Working God's Mischief. The series follows the tradition of the best of the Black Company books, bringing a level of gritty realism to military fantasy unlike any other. So that is basically what Glenn Cook is known for. And you see, I think, echoes of his influence in the work of guys like Joe Abercrombie and what have you, maybe even to a certain extent the way in which George R.R. Martin sort of put Westeros together. You know, it's arguable that, he may have had a little bit of a Glenn Cook DNA in some of that. So here you go, Working God's Mischief, the fourth in the Instrumentalities of Night series, now in hardcover from Tor. And okay, everyone, as the rain continues to pour outside, that is all I have got time for on the mailbag this week. Now, please leave a like if you enjoyed watching. In the comments, tell me which of any of these books you think looks most intriguing. Share this video with all of your SFF reading friends, and above all, please subscribe. Get all of your SFF reading friends to subscribe as well. Share the love and the joy of reading SFF everywhere around the globe, to all the children, etc., etc., etc. We'll sing a happy song, and until I see you next time, happy reading.